You're live.
Okay. All right, good morning, guys. Okay, final two lectures coming up over the next 2 weekends. Okay, this one's on Mikhail Gorbachev, one of the most controversial figures in all of Russian history. I admire this guy. I'm going to tell you right out. Okay, all right, I really do. I'm a little biased in that, but if you talk to a Russian, they think he's a bungler, a clod, an idiot. Okay, a man who destroyed the powerful Soviet Union. Okay, and he did do that, but he wasn't a bungler. Okay, he met so much resistance he could do nothing else in the end. So my game plan is this: go over Gorbachev today. It's uh, uh, and then when we hit next week, next Saturday, actually, I'll tape. Okay, it's going to be the collapse of the Soviet Union, and then the echo effect, the reign of Boris Yeltsin, and the reign of moving into Putin's era. Okay, so we'll be talking about that in the next class. That'll give you the material to complete your final exam as of Saturday. You can get 99% of it done now. You really can. Okay, I urge you to work on that. Get it done. All right. The final wrap-ups, final two comments I'll do on Saturday, and then you can get it in the mail to me. Remember, it's got to be postmarked by the 14th. I won't accept anything late, guys. Okay, because you've had time at home now, being housebound, to get all this work done. Also in the mail, you received the report card grade book summary. Usually in class, and those of you who had me in class before know I do this, I literally pass around my grade books. You can see what I call holes are, things that everybody else has done and you haven't, all right? It's also designed to check the grades you have, that I gave you the accurate ones. Now, not being able to physically meet with you, I had to do the grade book by that way. It doesn't give you a final grade. Remember, I don't average grades. If you come up with 2 A's and you've done all the rest of the work, okay, you're going to get an A for the class. A lot of you have it already in the form of the project. You got an A on the books already. So you need to get an A on your final, an A on your cumulative total of papers, and I admit I grade them a little more stringently, okay, all right, and also to your quizzes, and they're objective, right or wrong, all right. So there's 4 areas in which you can get 2 A's. You get 2 A's, you got an A for the class, okay, all right. Canvas doesn't allow me to do that, guys. That's why I don't like Canvas. All right, I know the professors do too. I'm not going to get railing on Canvas now, but at any rate, okay, that's the approach. All right, so I think we're clear. If you're not clear on something, and sometimes I get students asking me, I wasn't sure about this answer. Call me, okay? I'm here for you. I'll be happy to explain it and lead you to a logic, lead you to an answer, give you the answer if I have to. All right. Well, where do we start with this guy? Okay, the last leader of the Soviet Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, demonstrated the need for a young, energetic leader. You had Yuri Andropov come in. He ruled for about 15 months. Then you had Antonin Chernenko come in at age 74, rules for about 13 months, and they both die. Okay, all right. So they need to get a younger blood in there, and they do that. They do that not only in Gorbachev, but a whole series of reformers. Now, reformers. Does the Soviet Union need reform? My God, folks, these numbers are incredibly vivid here in terms of the need for reform. In your handout packet last week, I'd asked you to read, okay, the article called Russian Roulette. Primary source. It was written about 1989. Okay, it appeared in U.S. News and World Report. Mortimer Zuckerman wrote it. Mortimer Zuckerman, excuse me. All right, and I have it here in my notebook to highlight a certain couple of parts here. So hopefully, as always, you have your notes out in front of you. Okay, but listen to see some of these numbers here, okay? This Soviet experiment's going on for 74 years, 70 years at this point, okay, with always the promise of a better future. So here it is, 1989, okay, all right? The century's coming to an end. The century started off with the Russian Revolution and a promise of a brand new world. Well, 40 million people live in poverty. Every 6th hospital bed is an institution with no running water. One out of every 6 hospital beds, okay, has no running water. 1 out of 3 Soviet hospitals have no indoor toilets. How do you get a guy in a stretcher outside in the snow to go pee? Okay, all right. A 950 bed hospital gets an average of 1 or 2 hypodermic needles a day, so they're using other needles, reusing them. Hopefully they're sterilizing them. All right. Half the schools have no central heating. In Russia, the coldest country in the world, okay, running water or indoor toilets. No central heating, running water, indoor toilets. Soviet citizens in 1980 have a worse diet than they did under the Russian czars, and that ended in 1917. Russia then was the largest food exporter. Now it's the largest food importer. Russia was a mess. And when Gorbachev came into power, okay, all right, in March of 1985, one of the first things he said was, we can't go on like this. We've got to fix it. So whatever it takes, do the right thing, get it done. I want to back up a second. Brezhnev, to me, was one of the worst because all we had was zestoi, stagnation, all right? He did nothing to give anything to the people, all right, in terms of consumer goods or things like this. He just bankrupted the economy by sending out all this help to foreign governments in terms of foreign Marxist governments, propping them up in Eastern Europe and Afghanistan and Ethiopia and Yemen, all right? He sent out so much money trying to compete with the United States in terms of missile production and things like this. Why? Okay, all right. He had détente, and he could have built on détente and had a better relationship with the United States, and maybe they can destabilize things and cut back on missiles. Yes, I know they signed SALT 1. Okay, all right, but they signed SALT 2, but that was reduction of offensive weapons. SALT 1 was defensive weapons that I spoke about before, and but still, they could have done more with this. He could have run with it. He could have ended the Cold War and run with this thing, but instead he invades Afghanistan, and it comes to an end. It brings about an end to the Cold War. I'm sorry, restarts the Cold War. I apologize. All right, now let's take a look at Gorbachev. Who was he? He was a lesser party communist official down in the area around the Caucasus Mountains, southern Ukraine, this sort of thing. He and his wife Raisa, okay, both had PhDs. One of the most, not that that's a measure of intelligence. I've never suggested that. Okay, having a PhD is a measure of opportunity. Okay, determination, I'll give you that, discipline, and also too the financial wherewithal to get it done. It's not a measure of intelligence, all right. But at any rate, he and Raisa were intelligent people. He was an idealist. I like this, I really do. I'm an idealist. Okay, all right. I spoke to you about your quizzes being handled by just you, no networking, the honor system. I put a lot of my classes on the honor system, all right. But he, for example, okay, came out against corruption. He says, got to come to an end. Anti-theft, anti-bribery, anti-vulgarity. Vulgarity. When I was growing up, the F-bomb was never used. It was used only by the lowest dregs of kids in high school or grammar school. You hardly ever heard it. Okay, now even presidents say it. Okay, anti-vulgarity, anti-prostitution, anti-slackers. Get the work done. Okay, all right. He was a firm believer in social activist. He also believed in communism, folks. He believed in a socialist state. Take care of the people. All right, but he was not a Stalinist. He's a child rather, of the 20th Party Congress, the secret speech by Nikita Khrushchev. Okay, well, he comes in March of 1985. Okay, all right, and what does he get hit with almost immediately? Well, he gets hit with Chernobyl. Now, you know what Chernobyl was, I think. Okay, there was a special on one HBO or something like that, a several-part series. I read the book, Midnight in Chernobyl. It's very good, okay? And it's it's a nuclear power plant meltdown, okay, that we still don't know how many people died, okay? The official figure is something like 150, okay, all right? But literally people with radiation fallout and sickness and things like this, the figures are probably going to go into several thousand when it's all said and done, all right? So this hits them. It's a $12.8 billion cleanup. That's money that can be spent elsewhere, folks. Okay, all right? And initially, too, they tried to sweep it under the rug. The fallout cloud from Chernobyl, all right, when it melted down and had a massive fire and release of radioactive gas, was detected over Finland and Norway and Sweden. And they're saying, okay, where's this coming from? What's going on? Soviet Union remained silent. They tried to hide it from their people. This is typical of the old way of doing things in Russia, okay, all right, that Gorbachev had said he was going to be different, more transparent, okay. Well, he starts off by stubbing his toe on this, all right. So this hurts his credibility, Okay. Secondly, all right, the oil prices drop. When you got a one-product economy, such as the Soviet Union had, okay, all right, all based on oil or natural gas, all right, those oil prices falling are going to really cripple your economy. No question all about that. Well, he does start down the road of reform, okay, and following your note sheets now, okay, thank you. Following note sheets now by giving the local Soviets more power, more control over decision making. That's been done before. Khrushchev did it. Okay, even Brezhnev did that. So that's a little bit of lip service there. But he does meet with Ronald Reagan. Okay, Ronald Reagan had called during his first term, 1980. He was elected. In his first term, he called the Russian state the evil empire, and he's cast himself as opposing what's the word I'm looking for? The Cold War stability, saying no, we're going to beat that country. We're going to get rid of them as not by war, okay, but economically, etc. There's a word I'm looking for, I can't think of it. The peaceful coexistence, okay? I don't want to have any more status quo, he says. So he meets with Gorbachev. Not much comes out of this first meeting, okay? But at any rate, they began to look at numbers. The United States and Russia were spending $350 billion a year and $300 billion and $350 billion a year on weapons, on the Cold War. All right, the United States was making 5 nuclear warheads a day. How many do you need? Both sides together had about 60,000 warheads. You know, there's a great analogy here done by a famous thinker, astronomer from Cornell, actually, by the name of Carl Sagan. And he once said, picture this, 2 men standing in a room waist deep in gasoline. They're eyeball to eyeball. They hate each other. One guy takes a match and says, I've got the match. The other guy says, oh my God, I got to get more matches myself. He gets 5 matches. The guy with the 1 match then gets 10. This guy gets 20. This guy gets 50. This guy gets 100. This guy gets 1,000. The buildup of weapon systems. How many missiles do we need? Okay, it only takes 1 basically to do the weapon system I had back then. I don't say 1, but they estimated maybe 3 cobalt bombs could destroy life on Earth. Cobalt bomb was never developed, thank God. Okay, but at any rate, Reagan does come away proposing Star Wars. And Star Wars, based upon the movie, of course, name-wise, okay, but was basically a massive anti-ballistic weapons system that could intercept incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs from Russia, and shoot them out of the sky. Would also use killer satellites to diffuse their weapon systems, their mechanisms. All right, this is going to cost billions of dollars. Even the United States Congress said, we can't afford this, but he uses this to kind of bluff Gorbachev into negotiation. Okay, all right. So the Star Wars program, okay, all right, you know, called for the it was basically a violation of the anti-ballistic missile treaty that had been signed in the days after the Cuban Missile Crisis, but nobody talked about that. Okay, well. By 1986, all right, his team of reformers, now I should give you the names here. Not all of them, but there's a group, about half a dozen guys who are in the same league, okay, all the same mindset, okay, all right. Mikhail Gorbachev, Igor Ligachev, Boris Yeltsin is in the mix, Edvard Shevardnadze, and Yakovlev, I forget his first name, I think it's Alexander. But anyway, these guys want to change the system, okay? So by 1986, in Yeltsin's mind, it's not going fast enough, and he begins to denounce Gorbachev in the meeting in the Politburo. The Politburo is the old Central Committee, okay, that tight-knit group of revolutionary leaders who are going to guide the revolution, okay, all right, and then the rest of the Politburo turns on Yeltsin and said, all right, and sometimes in the harshest terms, okay, they called him a deserter, politically ambitious, self-serving, an embarrassment, immature, a political nihilist, a publicity hound, irresponsible, a wrecker of party unity, a coward, a demagogue, a slanderer. A lot of that's true, folks, as you're going to see down the road next week's lecture. But at any rate, they expel him from the Politburo. His time will come. And now he's a mortal enemy of Mikhail Gorbachev. That necessary party cadre, that unity of group of people within the Politburo that are reform-minded, needed to stay together, okay? And they're starting to splinter here. Well, in 1987 also, two other things occur. One is that Reagan calls for the dismantling of the Berlin Wall. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Okay, that wall. That is a famous quote, and ultimately it'll happen. Okay, not necessarily by Gorbachev, but it will happen. Okay, 2 years later, actually. The other thing is this: we start to head toward multi-party elections now. Gorbachev said, it isn't the Communist Party that has all the answers. Okay, all right? We can have other parties with other ideas and other leaders. This is political dynamite once you open the floodgates for criticism and things like this, all right? So at any rate, all right, the multi-party systems begin to be held in local districts. And they don't come out as well for the Communist Party as people thought. So the old line Communist parties begin to say, whoa, what's going on here? The apparatchiki, the lower level Communist Party members, if they vote them out, I'm out of a job. So they block it, block any reform that he's going to pass in the future here. That's going to be a big stumbling block here. All right, implementing reforms, you need the help of the lower cadres. Okay, and they're worried that they can keep their job. All right, the nomenclatura at the top, they're saying, I've made a lot of money being a member of the Communist Party. I don't want to lose this status. All right, so you've got people within the party blocking the reform. And I think it gets worse as time goes on. Okay, now, all right. In 1988, Gorbachev announced at the 27th Party Congress Glasnost and Perestroika. What are these? Glasnost is right on your note sheets. I'm not going to spell it for you, but Glasnost meant new thinking. All right. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. It meant openness, open discussion. You can criticize. There's a very famous picture of Gorbachev down in the Donbass region addressing coal miners who had gone on strike. And just pictures one guy with his coal helmet on backwards. Okay, he's got his finger in the chest of Mikhail Gorbachev, the chairman of the Communist Party, the general secretary of the Communist Party. My God, can you imagine it happening under Stalin or Brezhnev or Khrushchev even? Okay, all right. At any rate, it opened up the floodgates for criticism. And now you're going to start to have demonstrations, people demanding reform. All right, Perestroika was the reform. This is new thinking. We need a program here. All right, so Perestroika comes out. He does create a new legal system. He rejects totalitarianism, Stalinism in other words, okay? He wants to make Parliament a true legislative body. All Parliament did was rubber stamp any policies coming out of the Politburo and the Russian Communist Party. He wants more multi-party elections, allow them by law. A law on enterprises, which is basically a revisitation of the old new economic policy under Lenin. Allow businesses to come up with a certain quota, and then anything beyond that they can sell in the open market. Okay, things like this, all right? Since I'm holding a coffee cup in my hand, use an example of that. A factory building coffee cups has to make $500,000 a year. If they make $750,000, they can sell the other $250,000 on the open market. This is a good thing, all right? It's kind of what the Chinese communists do now, okay? All right, at any rate, he also changes the name of his title to President of the USSR. That's going to be significant down the road. You're going to see Yeltsin's going to get that position, all right? He begins to withdraw the troops from, it had begun earlier than this, but he came on board immediately saying, I want the troops out of Afghanistan. All right, so here it is 1988. Look at all he's done so far. There's also a discovery of mass graves from the Stalin era. That just in the minds of many shows how evil Stalin was. All right. The Armenian earthquake also demonstrated this. 25,000 died in an earthquake in Armenia that was 6.9 on the Richter scale, but they say it's in a remote region and it shouldn't have been that bad. I don't know what to make of that, but I do know this. When reports first came out about this, I remember this very vividly, all right, that there were the buildings that came tumbling down were the ones built in the Stalinist era. They were basically blocks of concrete stacked like dominoes. No steel reinforcing rods, no steel interior skeleton girders, okay, things like that. So when those began to sway with the earthquake, they came tumbling down and 25,000 died. Okay, again, refuting what Stalin was all about. Why? Because they've been built because some guy was given a quota, build 25,000 housing units, and if you don't, you'll be shot. So he throws them together just to save his own life. Shoddy workmanship. Okay, was typical of the Soviet Union. All right, it begins to crumble. In Estonia, one of the three Baltic states, they form a non-communist party, and they're on the ballot. Okay, a lot of the crumbling of the Soviet Union is going to begin in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Gorbachev visited the United States, okay, addressed the UN, dropped a bomb, figuratively speaking, okay, no pun intended, I guess maybe not. Anyway, he announces unilateral withdrawal, disarmament. We will end the nuclear arms race. You don't care if the United States follows suit, but we'll do it on our own. My God, can you imagine the people in Russia hearing that, the people in the United States, the rest of the world hearing it in the UN? This guy is so bold in his reform package, okay, that it's scaring a lot of people. I just have tremendous admiration for this guy, okay, in terms of what he's doing here. He also says I'm going to withdraw 500,000 troops from Eastern Europe, okay, and withdraw tanks and everything else like that. We're going to let them go their own way. I'll come back to that. All right. He proposes a second Reagan-Gorbachev summit. Okay, all right, and they do meet again. Reagan and Gorbachev are going to form a great partnership here. They really will. All right, they'll visit each other's countries. A famous picture outside St. Basil's Cathedral of Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev too began to have a cult of Gorbachev forming around him. Even the people in Russia like this, because remember, never more than 10% of the people in Russia were part of the Communist Party. All right, so the other 90% saying, yeah, we like this. No more threat of nuclear war. Okay, we can make a few bucks on the side selling the surplus. Okay, it's all looking good. Okay, so the cult of Gorbachev, the personality cult, not that he cultivated that, but the cult of Gorbachev gets bigger and bigger and bigger and really kind of reaches its height in 1988. Okay, 87, 88, 89. Okay, all right. He was famous for walkabouts. Now, he didn't use that term, okay, but he would be in a limousine, say he's touring New York City or he's touring Kiev, all right? And he'd just get out of the car. Even in the United States, get out of the car and start wading into the crowd, shaking hands, okay, things like this. The people loved him, even in the United States, even in Berlin and other cities like that. They loved this guy, okay, because he's creating a whole new world. Think about that. Well, at any rate, guys, okay, all right. By 1989, okay, all right, what do you got? You got Estonia declaring a Popular Front Party opposing the Communist Party, okay, they're allowed to do it. And then he furthers that, Gorbachev does, by announcing the Sinatra Doctrine. Now, Frank Sinatra had a song called I Did It My Way. So he used that analogy with Eastern Europe. There are multiple roads to socialism. And even Brezhnev had said that. Even Khrushchev had said that. Okay, there are multiple roads to socialism. We can all do this. You can do your own way. I think you should have used for the title of this program. And I'm kidding around now. Okay, the Fleetwood Mac song, "Go Your Own Way," but that would have been I don't know how many people know Fleetwood Mac. But anyway, things are beginning to unravel because it's going to create a domino effect. You're going to have one country break away, then another, then another, then another. Okay, all right. Multi-party election is held for the Congress of People's Deputies. This is the first parliament that Russia's ever really had with any kind of legislative power, and the Communist Party loses control. They're not the majority party anymore. That says it all, I think. The people are just so disgruntled with the communists. All right. He completes the withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1989, okay, all right, but he ends also, too, the support for non-communist parties, okay. He says, we can't afford to prop up your economies in Eastern Europe anymore. We're going bankrupt. He's right, okay. He has the guts to say it. So non-communist parties begin to form in Poland and Lithuania. Even within the Soviet Union, a party forms which is called the Inter-Regional Group. Okay, all right, which is opposing the Communist Party. Okay, Hungary opens its borders. You go your own way now. Hungary opens its borders, allowing people, Hungarians, to basically leave. Others to come in. Not that anyone wants to come into a communist country, but people who are disgruntled with the Hungarian regime, the Hungarian Communist Party, can now leave. All right, this opens the floodgates. Then you're going to have East Germany doing the same thing. Okay, things like this. All right. Now, before I go further with this, all right, the Gorbachev visited Red China. Okay, he signed the INF treaty with Reagan, which significantly reduced, probably the biggest reduction in nuclear weaponry. But there were middle-range missiles, medium missiles that would strike European powers. Okay, Warsaw Pact versus NATO. All right, the Europeans had a party called the Green Party, which was not only environmental, but was also anti-nuke, and demonstrations and riotings. We're not going to be the battleground for a war between the Soviet Union and the United States. Okay, get rid of the medium-range nuclear missiles. They did. Now, I have to tell you, do this what you want, but this was lately shot down and abrogated, okay, eliminated, taken away by President Trump. So I don't know what to make of that. But at any rate, the INF Treaty was a significant reduction in nuclear weaponry. Well, we all know the big event. It's highlighted on your note sheet there in 1989. One of the salient events in world history. All right, the Berlin Wall comes down. The people of Berlin, okay, now begin to get access out of East Berlin, out of East Germany. All right, and the wall, that symbol of Cold War realities, comes down. It's pounded down with sledgehammers, bulldozers, everything. There are remnants of it still there, but it was hugely symbolic. And yes, I didn't bring it down here with me to show you, but I got a little chunk of the Berlin Wall, about that big. Okay, all right, probably from somebody's neighborhood sidewalk, but you know, I'm gullible. I'll believe it. Okay, you go online buying this stuff, and a student bought one for me. I was forever indebted to him. Well, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, the communist governments fall one after the other. This domino effect is taking place. And Russia's hold over Eastern Europe, which was so vital to their economic system, so vital to their image as a global superpower, is now flaked away. All right? All right. 1990. Gorbachev wins the Nobel Peace Prize. He deserves it. Lithuania, Estonia, Armenia and Georgia, fringe states, all vote to secede from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is falling apart at the edges. Okay, their non-communist parties are in power now, and they're voting to secede from the Soviet Union. Secessionist demonstrations in Azerbaijan were the wrong word, crushed on your note sheet there. Gorbachev sent in tanks and troops because basically it broke out to be a racial riot. I'm not a racial riot, a religious riot. Muslims versus Christians. And he says, we can't have this. He's restoring order. So the word crushed is not appropriate there. But Yeltsin's back in the mix. Okay, he was a populist. Okay, he's a guy that had gained a lot of fame during the attempted coup. Now, I didn't go into that yet, okay, but I want to talk about that in just a second here, okay. The attempted coup against Gorbachev in 1991. All right, he was a populist. A lot of people liked him. Okay, all right, he was a good old boy, okay, serious alcoholic, okay, but he had a certain personality, persona, and charm, okay, so they saw him as a reformer, and also, too, if people were disgruntled at how quickly Gorbachev's reforms were occurring, maybe it wasn't enough for them. Maybe they weren't rapid enough. So Yeltsin represents an alternative, and he gets elected by the parliament now, not by the Communist Party, but by the parliament as the president of the USSR. That's Gorbachev's old job. Now, keep in mind, Gorbachev was still the chairman of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So you got two guys at the top now, Yeltsin for the presidency and Gorbachev for the head of the Communist Party. Well, Gorbachev calls for the Stalin Plan, okay? Now, what do I mean by the Stalin Plan? This is 1990, okay? All right? Yeltsin was elected president of the Supreme Soviet. I jumped down there a little bit. I apologize, okay? Demonstrators march in Moscow demanding reforms, 1990. Gorbachev announces the Stalin Plan, all right? Listen to this. The Stalin Plan was genuinely bold, probably unrealistic as well. It foresaw a massive fire sale of state enterprises. Okay, 46,000 industrial firms and 760,000 firms engaged in wholesale and retail trade were to be sold off to the public, to individuals and to groups, all within 6 months. Ultimately, it foresaw the sale into private hands of 80% of the Soviet economy, of the national economy. Only the people who have money can afford to buy these things up, and you can start to see the rise of the oligarchs, the rise of the billionaires that exist in Russia. Okay, all right? The plan also called for the dissolution of the money-losing state and collective farms, state and collective farms, the kolkhoz and the sovkhoz, all right, giving their land to individuals or groups of farmers who wanted to go into business for themselves. All right, it foresaw the early creation of 150,000 new peasant farms. There were vast reductions in government spending, 10% cut in military budgets, a 20% reduction in spending for the KGB. Uh-oh, that's the secret police. 20% budget cut, they're not happy. Currency reform, making the new ruble convertible with hard currencies of the capitalist world. All right, the dollar and things like that. A new banking system would create to make the Soviet Union, all right, give it a world bank and make it as Moscow relinquished control over economic activity. You need a national bank. Okay, all right. We had ours as early as the 1790s in this country. All right, the idea, all this occurred. All this was scheduled to occur within just 500 days, so a year and a half. That's almost impossible. But now he says, this is what my ultimate dream for this state. We don't have to be a Stalinist state. We'll still take care of our people with universal health care, universal education. That's what socialism is. But also, too, now, he called for a total free market economy, multi-party system, and that's when Yeltsin comes in as the president of the USSR. He dissolved the Warsaw Pact, dissolve Comecon, which is all support for the Eastern European states. Is it happening too fast? Are the apparatchiks and nomenklatura fearful of their jobs? You bet they are. Absolutely. So the conservatives within the Communist Party will launch a coup. Very famous scene comes out of this coup. Two famous scenes, actually. They'll take over the government building. They call it the White House, the government parliamentary building. I wish I had pictures to show you. I do in class, but anyway. All right. They had tall structures, okay, all right, which was a white building, probably about maybe 80 floors somewhere in, I don't know offhand, but it's big. All right, and the pictures of the blackened out upper rooms there as fires broke out when the army came in and fired tanks in against these guys who have tried to take over the Soviet government. They're the conservatives. Now, at least one of them, Igor Ligachev, was a former ally of Gorbachev. Okay, he's heading this group as well. Okay, all right. So they want to say, no, back off. Yeah, we'll reform at a slower pace here. Maybe even at a communistic pace, rather than this breakneck socialistic pace. Who puts it down? Here's the second great picture. Yeltsin, who is a reformer at heart, don't lose sight of that, okay, jumps on board a tank, and I actually have the speech. I'm not going to use up time reading it to you, but he basically calls upon the army and the Russian people to resist these rebels, okay, all right? Keep the momentum for reform going. We can create a better state. The communists have failed and they want to regain power, okay? Eliminate them. He saves Gorbachev's job, whether he intended to or not, okay? The coup is put down. It's August, okay? It lasted 3 days, okay, and Gorbachev retains power. But now the Baltic states, Lithuania and Estonia, secede from the Soviet Union, all right? Ukraine, Moldavia, Belarus, and those are big states, Ukraine and Belarus. They also secede from the USSR. Yeltsin announces his own reform program. As the president of the USSR, he says, break the whole thing up and create something called the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and I ask you to join us. He calls for the breakup of the Soviet Union. Well, the CIS, okay, I think the original states were Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, okay, joined them. The others did not. There were 15 republics in the old Soviet Union. They're now going their own way. It's fragmenting. Like taking this coffee cup and dropping it and breaking it apart. Shatters it. The same thing's happening here. All right. Well, at any rate, he also calls for the dissolution, as does Gorbachev, of the Communist Party. Because to him now the Communist Party has been doing nothing more than blocking his reforms. Get rid of it. And what he does on Christmas night in 1991 was he signed the Communist Party out of existence. He had the power to do that. He's still the chairman of the Communist Party. He says it no longer exists. There were some states that had seceded away and outlawed the Communist Party. All right, so if you don't have a Communist Party, you don't have a Soviet Union, period. He has dissolved the Soviet Union. Along with Yeltsin, I agree with that. Well, listen to this then. This is by Donald Treitzman, who wrote a great biography of Gorbachev. And then, under the gentle prodding of the most educated leader since Lenin, the whole structure crumbled like a sandcastle. 1991 is the end of the Cold War, the end of the Soviet Union. I have a couple of other readings here to kind of analyze him, okay? But make no mistake, he's viewed in the West entirely different the way he's viewed in Russia. The Russian people hate this guy because they used to be a great power, but now they're not. In 1991, through the 90s. This is the agenda of Vladimir Putin, to restore great power status to the Soviet Union. That's what not the Soviet Union, but to Russia. That's what he wants to do. And I'll go into him a little bit later on, but what's interesting here too is this, okay? This is one writer, I forget the name of the author here, okay? I left Gorbachev's office thinking that everything about him was outsized, his achievements, his mistakes, and even his vanity and bitterness. Gorbachev revealed the depths of his bitterness. He loved his place in the world, a place he had earned despite all his mistakes, and now it seemed was slipping away. He was despised in his own country. Gorbachev had guided Russia to its historical fate. I think saying this, guided the Soviet Union to its historical fate. He entered the pantheon of Russian history, and gradually he became to be seen as a great figure. I believe that's true. Gradually he will become to be seen as a great figure, but not soon. Russians are an ungrateful people. He once thought about his place in history. Once, when asked about earlier Russian leaders and how he compared himself, he listed Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, Alexander II. I think that's all fair. Okay, all right? But of course, he added the one I feel closest to is Lenin. All right? I wonder if he did that out of just paying kind of lip service to Lenin, whether he really believed it or not. Okay, I think he did like Lenin's revolutionary change. He had to get rid of the old Tsarist system. We've seen that. Nicholas II had to go. Okay, all right? But I'm not sure he liked what the Soviet Union became, and certainly not under Stalin. So he disappears. Now, just to give you an update on him, he's still alive. He's still alive, living in Russia. Okay, kind of isolated and lonely. He did run for president again. Okay, but he was soundly defeated. Okay, all right? He still goes on a speaking tour. He's big bucks, though. Okay, so we want to get him for the OCC virtual graduation. It's not going to happen. But anyway, he can get it. He's kind of a broken man. He was very close to his wife, Raisa. They were a great combination, all right? And she died around 2000, maybe a little before or after. And he's been kind of a broken man since then. But at any rate, what we're going to do on Saturday, okay, is I'm now going to take a look at the material on the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the superpower, what broke apart the Soviet Union, a formula for collapse, and then I'm going to have a few words to say about Yeltsin, the ultimate failure, and then as well as some stuff about modern Russia and Putin as well. So you got one more probably half-hour, 40-minute lecture coming up. And then that's it. But guys, as I say, I meant that in all sincerity when I said at the beginning, you can get started on your final exam now. Probably get 95% of it done. Okay, so don't let it go till the last night. Okay, if you have questions on that exam, all right, make sure you call me. It's not an exam designed for you. It's designed for this class being partly online. It's the same one I've always given. Okay, so the idea is that you're getting a fair assessment here of how well this whole thing worked in terms of teaching it online as opposed to teaching it in class. I do want to just add this to you. There's a question on there. I think it's on there that referenced something called the kitchen debates. This is something I did not go over when I was doing Gorbachev. I guess that was, what, 2 weeks ago? Okay, I'm sorry, not Gorbachev. Khrushchev, excuse me. 2 weeks ago. That occurred in Moscow during Khrushchev's reign. Nixon went to Moscow. Now, Nixon was the vice president, okay? And they created a model kitchen, a model American kitchen with microwave ovens and running water and all sorts of good stuff, electric toasters, everything, all right? Khrushchev kept saying, oh, we developed that, and we have that. We did that first, okay? Childlike, okay? Well, I did it before you. We're better than you are. Okay, no, you're not. Yes, I am. All right? There's a remarkable picture there of Nixon putting his finger in Gorbachev's chest. I keep saying Gorbachev. Of Khrushchev's chest. So it's Khrushchev, 1960s, Nixon's visit to Moscow, okay? Maybe late 50s. At any rate, guys, okay, if that comes up in your exam, I wanted to clarify that for you because I forgot to cover it. It's not a big thing, but it does. I do like to be as thorough as I can. All right, I will see you next week. Get the work in, guys. Look at those gradebook check sheets. A lot of you are missing papers. Okay, 1/3 of the class has at least one paper missing. Okay, all right. Some have all three. Okay, I won't take anything. Don't even ask. I won't take anything that was postmarked or email dated after the 14th of May. Don't even ask, okay? Because you had time to get this stuff done. A lot of you still owe some quizzes, okay? So get them done too as well. All right, see you next week.